Evan Carter was 10 years old when he disappeared from the small rural town of Brindle Creek. A peaceful place, a place where doors stayed unlocked, where neighbors waved at one another, and where the loudest sound most evenings was the train rolling gently past the willow trees near the old service trail. Brindle Creek wasn't the kind of town where children vanished. Not before Evan. Not since. Yet his disappearance would become one of the most puzzling and quietly heartbreaking mysteries the town had ever faced. A case with no struggle, no clear suspect, and no definitive last sighting. Just a boy walking home on a warm Friday afternoon, taking a shortcut he had taken before and then simply gone. This is his story. On May 22nd, 1998, Evan had a normal school day. He sat in his usual seat in Ms. Harper's class, third row from the window. He traded Pokemon cards at lunch. He played handball during recess. He complained about the spaghetti in the cafeteria. Everything was perfectly ordinary. School let out at 3:10 p.m. Rain clouds were building, thick and gray, drifting in fast from the west. Evan didn't like walking home in the rain. He said it made his socks stick to his ankles. So when his friends took the usual long route past the park, Evan waved and told them, "I'm taking the shortcut, I'll beat the rain." It was only a 10-minute detour through the old service trail, a narrow dirt path cutting behind the train tracks and weaving between tall grass and eucalyptus trees. He'd taken it before. Kids in the town had taken it for decades. But on that day, something went differently. A neighbor, Mrs. Adler, remembered seeing Evan standing at the entrance of the trail. She was watering her garden and noticed him because he kept glancing at the sky, checking how much time he had before the storm hit. She waved. He waved back. That was the last confirmed sighting. A few minutes later, the first soft drops of rain started falling. Not enough to soak the ground, just enough to hurry a child along. When Evan didn't arrive home by 3:45 p.m., his mother assumed he got caught talking with friends somewhere along the streets. By 4:30 p.m., she began to worry, and at 5:10 p.m., with no word from her son, she called the police. Police officers arrived quickly. In small towns, they always do. The storm had passed by then, leaving the sky clear and the scent of wet earth hanging in the air. The first place they searched was obvious, the service trail. Officers walked it slowly, scanning the muddy ground for footprints, for broken twigs, for any sign of a child having slipped or fallen. But rain had washed away most of the subtle prints, leaving only smudges and puddles. Then, near a cluster of trees, they found something strange. Evan's backpack. Not tossed. Not dropped. Not torn or dirty. It was sitting upright, perfectly balanced against the base of a tree. Zipped closed. Dry despite the rain. It looked placed. Inside, everything was orderly. His math notebook. His favorite mechanical pencil. A half-eaten snack. Nothing missing. But Evan himself was nowhere in sight. The service trail wasn't long. An adult could walk it in 6 minutes. A child might take 10. Yet after hours of searching, investigators realized something disturbing. There was no point along the trail where Evan could have realistically left without being seen. To one side were thick bushes that would have left scratches on any child trying to push through. To the other was a steep drop leading into a shallow creek where no footprints, mud, or signs of a fall were found. There were no drag marks, no footprints leading away, no broken branches, nothing. It was as if Evan had simply vanished in the middle of the path. 2 days later, another item appeared. A local boy found Evan's notebook inside a storm drain near the school. Oddly, the pages were dry. The cover was clean, and there was no mud, no water damage. It couldn't have been sitting there during the storm. Someone had placed it there after the rain ended. But who? And why? The notebook contained nothing unusual. Spelling tests, doodles, multiplication tables. But its condition told investigators something chilling. Someone was moving Evan's belongings on purpose. Over the following weeks, theories emerged. 1. A stranger passing through town? Possible, but unlikely. There were no unfamiliar vehicles spotted and no reports of suspicious individuals. 2. Someone Evan knew. There was no sign he willingly left with anyone. An accident? If he'd fallen, slipped, or gotten hurt, the search teams would have found him. Or abduction? But there were no tracks, no evidence of a vehicle, no struggle, nothing. Every theory had a flaw. Every lead ended quietly. The town grew restless. For years, the case remained open but cold. Detectives would revisit it occasionally when new technology became available. Dogs were brought in again. Ground-penetrating radar was used years later. The creek was drained twice. Every search revealed the same thing. No Evan. No remains. No struggle. Nothing new. It was as if whatever happened to him had been meticulously planned or impossibly clean. In 2019, 21 years after Evan vanished, workers restoring an old barn on the outskirts of town made a discovery. Behind a wooden support beam, wedged deep inside a narrow gap, was a small metal house key attached to a faded green keychain. It was Evan's. The barn had been empty and unused since before Evan was born, yet the key looked like it had been placed there deliberately, not dropped or lost. The beam had never been removed before. Workers had to pry it open with tools to reach the key. There was no logical way for a child to tuck it inside that hidden space. The barn offered no other evidence. No footprints. No belongings. Nothing. Just that one key. Today, the disappearance of Evan Carter remains one of Brindle Creek's greatest mysteries. His belongings appearing in impossible locations. The lack of struggle. The perfect placement of his backpack. The dry notebook in a wet drain. And finally, the key hidden behind wood that hadn't been disturbed in decades. All of it paints a picture that feels less like a chaotic incident and more like a deliberate act. One committed slowly, quietly, and with an unsettling level of control. Every May, residents gather by the service trail holding candles for Evan. Some believe he wandered off and got lost. Others think he was taken by someone who knew the trail better than anyone. And a few whisper a stranger theory, that someone was moving Evan's items to confuse investigators, leaving behind a puzzle no one was ever supposed to solve. What happened on that warm Friday afternoon remains unknown. No answers. No closure. Only carefully placed clues. And a boy who never came home.